Ladies and gentlemen, we do not have the prices yet for our fantasy guys, but you do have the ability to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. If you're following on podcasts, follow along there. What you'll see with all these preseason videos, guys, is the podcast will come out first. I'm trying to promote that and build that up a little bit. If you want to use that instead of the videos, that's completely fine. Some bits of content may be completely fine to use podcasts, and others you might really want to enjoy the YouTube experience and see the numbers on my screen and everything like that as well. So they'll come out about 2 to 3 hours before the video each day in the preseason. I won't have that luxury in the during the season with speed being a big factor, but at the moment that's the way it's going to play. But with our video here today, we're going to be going through, we're splitting up into two. We're going hooker, we're going our mids, and we're also going our edges to kick things off. And it's the players that I think are going to improve on last year's average in very much the same or the similar roles. So it could be reasoning for changing club in that same role, but they are at a different club and have the ability to lead the pack more, or get better kick meters if it's a half, or they're in an increased role in their team by a little bit. We're not including guys like Mamazelis, who coming from not playing or on the bench into the team. It's the guys that are a very, very similar situation that I think will improve through having more experience and all that as well. So that's where we're coming from in this video. It's just a general idea on a bunch of guys that can likely do a good job this year on the footy park in general, with them becoming more important in their sides as they get older and more experienced and the like. And then a little bit of a look on guys you might want to look at in your fantasy teams, and dependent on when the prices come, where they shake out, these prices will determine whether you jump on any of these guys. But in the hooking position, I've got 3 up top. It's Harry Grant, it's Jaden Brayley, and it is Connor Watson. So Harry Grant came in at a 53.8, and he's one of those guys that has averaged higher in the previous couple of seasons, and I think he easily gets back into the 56, 57, 58 mold. More for the fact that I don't think he played very well last year, and I owned him for a lot of the year, especially up through Origin, and it just it wasn't terrific viewing. And then you look at the back end of the year and into the finals, and it was a much improved player. So there's going to be lots of question marks on Harry, given he has a round 2 bye. But I do think that if you decide to jump on him in round 1, in round 3, whenever it is, I think that you'll be handsomely rewarded with a 55 plus average. So a nice improvement there. Even if it's 1, if it's 2, if it's 3, I think all these guys will improve this year, and probably 3/4 of them will, and we'll have a quarter at least that have some injuries or things go down, that's for sure. But Jaden Brayley, 38 for him last year, and all the injuries and everything that was attached with that for Jaden, I do think that he's likely to be starting in round 1, and the minutes will come again. Last year was just, God, let's just get him through the year, given he's hardly stayed on the park for the last 4 years basically, with ACLs and everything like that he's gone through. So this is the year now that I think they worked him into it last year, and they'll build on that this year, and that 38 average I think will pale in comparison to what he'll end up on by the end of the season. Praying for injury luck with a lot of these guys as well, obviously. Connor Watson, a 49.7 for him, and looking at the first half of the year for Connor, I think it will be fair to look at, because we're unsure if he moves straight back into that 13 role. If he does, he'll definitely clear the 49.7, given he had lots of interchange games and a few injuries and moving during game and all that sort of thing. I think Connor will eclipse the 50 mark this year, and not too worried about that with that dual position as well. Terrell May, 50 for him. He had too many games where he had 20 to 30 minutes, and that's not going to happen this year. So same role as a starter or a decent minute guy, and it's just going to be more consistent with the Tigers, and he has more responsibility there. So Terrell, the lock of the year, you'd imagine, in our sides. James Fisher-Harris at a 44.9 average for him last year, and he was one of those guys where he gets well managed at the Panthers, and there's a lot of other really important forwards in that side that have the experience, that have the ability to play bigger minutes. You have Isaiah Yeo at 13, whereas he moves to the Warriors, and he doesn't have that big 80-minute guy in the lock position. He has another big minute forward in him with Barnett, but it's not an 80-minute guy. So I think there's minutes to go around for someone like Fish, who's going to be the leader of that pack. So a little bit of an uptick on him, and even if you get him to where he didn't have injury games, he's up near a 50. So he's a fun one heading into this year that I think will eclipse that 45 in the new team. Stefano at 44.9 as well. He comes into this season with a new squad in the Storm, and his minutes were decent last year. I don't know if that increases too much. If it does increase, then I think he'll obviously outdo that. Even if the minutes don't increase, I think he'll be able to be more consistent with the Storm, potentially score the odd extra try, and just that extra work ethic that he'll build at the Storm will get him above that 44.9. With Liam Henry, he's a very interesting one. It's just an awkward price, to be fair. Him and Corey Horsburgh are my next two guys, but with Fish leaving, Lindsay Smith clearly going into that starting pack now. Henry's going to go from closer to that 35 range, upwards of the 40 and potentially into a 45 role there in minutes. And we saw Lindsay Smith play 51 minutes off the bench. There's a chance that he could get up to that, but I do think there's at least a few minutes of an increase, and then he will have games where he does move and play edge again, like last year with Martin going and these types of could be injuries to Sorensen and whatever else happens across the season, or he goes into a starting role if there is an injury in that position to a Leota or a Lindsay Smith there, or he goes into Origin after playing for Australia. Corey Horsburgh, not a lot of games for him this year with 40 average in the end, but if he does get back into that starting side, or if he gets into a consistent 45 to 50 minute role, which I definitely think he can, then he will eclipse that 40. He was a regular 50s guy for a while there the year prior. Fell out of favour, had some issues with coach, and it sounds like they fixed that up a little bit, and hopefully he's back in good stead there. But Davi Moale, 32.4, he averaged last year, and it's actually wild. Hey, he's been in this league for 3.5 years now or something like that. He's 21 years old, so he starts to build himself into not a pack leader, but an important player on that bunny side, which hopefully is going forward and doing well. So 32.4 for him. He moved into that starting side in the back end of last year. I think he will eclipse that 32.4 and be a very interesting mid-range player. Along with Nafahu White, 31.1 for him last year, and with I was going to say Fish Harris, with Hargraves gone, with Terrell May gone, White moves into a really important role in that middle. And there were games last year he did really great with big minutes. He also had low minutes in certain games, and I think he has to push himself into an important role in that team. He was playing great footy for New Zealand as well. So Nafahu, I think he's going to eclipse that 31.1. Sam Hughes, 29 points a game last year for him, and one of those guys that was managed through the year. And with their forward pack being very similar, obviously, with you've got Satilli coming in, and he's going to plug certain holes, but I do think there'll be games where Hughesy just sticks to the 40 minutes a game rather than being 22 minutes one game, 47 the next, 31 the next. It'll be close to that 40 a game and moving up from the mid-30s, and I think that in itself and his improvement and fitness will get him to over 30 this year very comfortably. Toby and Ryan Couchman, especially Toby, had a really big role through the back end of the year last year. He got really good minutes off the bench, and they have recruited this year, but it has been in the outside backs with Gutho and with Damien Cook. And Cook can play, and Little can play some middle. But I think Toby especially, he did average 39, but those minutes were only there for a certain period of time. He didn't play a lot of games. That's where the average is there. But I think both him and Ryan come into bigger roles this season, and one of them, I think Toby at this point, will become relevant, but Ryan has the better price right now at a 29 average. So two really interesting players for the Dragons. I think they're going to have a great season. Let's move to some more expensive guys in the edge position. There's plenty there in the mids, and we know there's a lot of guns in that mid position as well. So it'll be a very, very interesting position into how you play it, whether you have one of those cheapies or you have a couple of guns in there as well. For your edges, I have a bit of a love affair with Jacob Preston since starting with him the year before in fantasy, and just enjoyed the rises, enjoyed the incredible scores. And last year he played less minutes, surprisingly enough. He didn't play 80 a lot. He had a couple of injuries as well, so I do think that 52 is a little bit unders, and it's probably closer to a 55 to 56 for Preston this year with any injury luck like he did the year before. and with a little bit of an increase in minutes or just natural improvement from him, he looks like one of those guys in a good team that can score a bunch of tries on the edge there. So I'm super excited for Preston to hit about a 55 or so. Dylan Lucas and Beau Fermor, both a 50 average for them last year. And they spent a lot of time either on the interchange bench with Lucas, playing centre. Same with Fermor with centre. And Beau was coming back from an ACL recovery. So he did start the year with 3 or 4 really slow games in the sort of the 30s. And then, especially in his second row starts, was absolutely incredible. And you could see he just started to run the footy more, had a more explosive power, and he's a big boy. So that was great for Beau. And then Dylan Lucas, if he can lock in that starting role, he's easily a 55 guy as well. So I think both Beau and Preston, and Dylan Lucas have the opportunity to move into the mid-50s category for two guys that are a little bit younger and are moving into sort of the prime of their career in their mid-20s, which is pretty fun to watch for those two guys, and are likely to have centre Chul as well, which is pretty crazy, given both of them played a bunch of games at centre, especially Beau there. So 2 guys at 50, super fun for those guys. Isaiah Papali'i at 46.6, and then you got Bateman as well. Before we get into those guys, just remember, guys, a private group this year. All of the information is in the description, so I won't go on too much, but you get plenty of good stuff. It's competitions, it's prizes, it's getting help from me, my rankings. You get help from all these legends that were in the top 20 last year. We had 5th. Well, 5th is now in there after winning one of my groups. You got 8th and 9th from the group last year, and then 21st and 26th, which is pretty crazy. So yeah, jump in there. There's plenty of great stuff, and if you love your fantasy footy and talking about it, it is all in there. But Papali'i, 46.6, and Bateman, 44.6. 2 guys that really faltered, and obviously had injuries in there, especially with Bateman last year at the Tigers, and they were closer to the 50 mark the year before. So just if you can look at the Tigers and they're a little bit of a drop off, but this year they even went lower than that. When Papali'i is this plus 60 guy, very easy to see him moving to the Panthers and being a guy that can hit 50 plus pretty comfortably. And then Bateman moves to the Cowboys, where he is going to be really, really well needed. That's for sure. You've got Tamalolo out to start the year. You've got Hilam Luki injured, unfortunately, and Finefeuiaki is gone to the Dolphins as well. So Bateman comes into a situation where he needs to play good minutes, whether it's a mixture of middle and a little bit of edge. We'll have to see what happens on that left edge. If it's Kai O'Donnell, is a chance, and I think that he might split some minutes with Bateman. And if Bateman's playing a fair bit of middle and a decent amount of edge as well to supplement those minutes, I think he's going to be a great pick as well, and should easily eclipse that number, even though his age is up near 31, I think now. Teague Wilton, 44.8, just one of those guys that did start the year a little bit slow, or had a good game to start and then slowed up through the middle of the year. Had some issues with his return from injury as well from the year prior. And then the back end of the year, he really, really dominated, and it was great fun to watch with him, that's for sure. Just his ability there to do great things on that left edge in a good team. He tackled really well, especially in the back half of that season there, and then into the finals. I think he was awesome. So a 44.8 for him should be closer to the 50 mark, and I think it will be. Got a few around this price point, around this average, that's for sure, that can improve. And Sean Blaw's the next guy on the list of 43.9. It was an interesting one, wasn't it? Given he came from the Tigers, a destructive ball runner, he'd have games where he'd be well into the 100-meter plus, and when he does that, it's offloads, it's tackle breaks, and it's tries and try assists central. For him last year, on that left edge, it obviously changed a lot with Munster and Wishart and these types of guys, and his work ethic, tiredness, new system, just a mixture of all of it. I think he started really slow, and you look at his run meters and they're tremendously low. So I think there's only upside on those run meters. If it stays fairly similar, he could average like a 45. If he improves and they use him a little bit more, like they did in some games where he'd get lovely line breaks and little line break assists and stuff like that, and that can translate to a few more tries and a few more runs a game, then he could be a 50 guy, which would be cool. Zach Hosking at 43.6. Super, super fun player. Obviously, as we saw at the beginning of last year, I didn't own him, and that was very, very sad. 69 into a 93 or something like that. Before, a few low, an interchange game, benchings, 2 injuries. So pretty rough for him to finish out the year, and he's going to come in with a clean bill of health, which will be nice. And at 43.6, if he is starting and it's anywhere above the 60-minute mark, which I think it is likely to be, it could be 60, could be 80, he still has value, and it'll be games where he does play the 80, even if he is a 60 guy. Long term, should be 45 to 55 is the average we'll see from Hosking. Connolly Lemuelu, interesting pick, that's for sure. So many knee problems to begin last year. A 37.7 average. He did play a lot to end the year, but he did not look anywhere near his damaging best from the year prior. So easily a 40s guy if he can get that clean bill of health, and should have that right edge, with Finn likely to be on the left to take over from Ewan Aitken. And yeah, 37.7 feels very low for him. Alex Seyfarth, 35.6 average last year, and likely to be on that right edge. And if he is, it's just a absolute fill up. 40 plus coming from him if we do see him on that edge longer term throughout the year. May change, obviously, if the injuries come, he could go to centre and stuff, but they do have Bird that should likely go to centre as well. So he's probably second in line to move out to the centres, and a guy that, we know is 40 plus easy if he is on that edge. And we saw a couple of games last year. We've seen it across his career. Whenever he gets that opportunity on the edge, he is a 40 plus guy, and I think that's going to come this year. Kelma Tuolangi, 31.4 is very, very little. Obviously, he played bench games, he played some start games, and when he did get that start, he was near the 40 mark, which was great. Obviously, with injuries and not running the footy too much, but things work out for him well enough when you price at that at 31.4 when you're on that edge. And if he does get that spot over Sean Lane and these types of guys, then I think he will eclipse that well and truly. If he's in and out, start, bench, all that kind of stuff, he may end up maybe like a 32, 33. But if the role is there, he's going to eclipse it really well. And if it's not there as much, I still think he'll get enough games to do well enough. 3 to go. Ben Trbojevic at 31.1. Another one of those guys you just expect with age, injuries that have happened, more time on that edge position. I think he can improve dramatically and be one of those guys that does hit in that 35 to 40 range. He doesn't have a tremendous fantasy game at this point of his career, but I do think that can improve. And at 31.1, it's not a lot that you need to go right for him to increase on that number. So if he's starting left edge for that Manly side, who doesn't have a lot of guys that can play that edge position, now with Lawton gone, it just makes it a little bit easier for him. And I think they'll trust him, and hopefully with a decent preseason there, he can get off on the right foot, and people might jump on him for fantasy as well. And then you've got Brendan Piakura. Interesting. But at 29.6, the average, obviously he cooked a lot of us last year. For Brendan, it's an average there that he can't play worse than what he did last year. And with all the hype from the year prior, and he looked great, Broncos playing terrible, his defensive line being really poor, he is going to have Ben Hunt next to him at this point of the year. Does that change things defensively? Does he learn not to jump out of the line with a new coach and not just chase people and all that kind of stuff where he'd pick up the missed tackles? I think that easily improves this year. Whether he becomes a 40 player or not, or whether he's like a 33, 34, it has to improve. So he's on this list. And then to finish it off, it's probably going to be a marginal improvement, to be fair, but Kulakefu Finefuriaki at 29.4. He is a player that is now going to get an increased role at his new club. Minutes, a bit of an uptick, but even when we saw him play really high minutes, it was still like a mid-30s average. So needs sort of 60 plus minutes to really improve, but should get somewhere in that 55 to 65 range pretty comfortably. And if so, he will be 30 plus. And at 29.4, he doesn't have the best fantasy game, but I still think he's going to be solid enough to do a really decent job for your sides if you do decide to pick him up. But yeah, I just wanted to jump in and go through this video here. We'll go through the halves and the centers and also the wing fullbacks in the next video that we do on this topic. And yeah, just thought it'd be really helpful to go through a lot of these guys that I think are a good chance of being in your sides, and just to give you an increased amount of players especially as well. So it's going to be about 45 or so players on this list I've got here. And that doesn't include all the fresher cash cows and your Sandon Smiths and these types of guys, which we'll get into. I'll pop through a really big video in when the game's open and stuff on all of the guns. I think are worthy targets. all of these guys will stay in the list, and then we'll add all those cheapies as well. So we'll have a collection of probably 80 plus players that I think you could fit into your 21-man squad. Obviously, the cheapies and stuff you'll have to lock in first, and then you could select any number of these mid-range guys and guns to set up your round one squad. And there's no cookie cutter perfect way to do this. Every gun has their place in your team, whether you like how they play. They're going to score pretty well close to their average unless something drastically changes, but a lot of these guys it's not. And then the mid-range, a lot of the time it's a bit of a punt. It could work out for some in the first 3 weeks. For others it might take 7 weeks and you've already sold them by that point, and it's frustrating. So we'll have to see how all that shakes out in trials once the game opens and all that sort of stuff. And hopefully, what are we now? We're 15, or when I'm making this, the 15th of January. So hopefully in the next week and a bit, we have the game open and we can get cracking with all of the good stuff. A few more teams to go through with Scoop, and then it will be all systems go for my content. 1 to 2 videos a day, basically from February onwards, which is going to be super fun, and I can't wait to see how it all shakes out. I hope this video helped for you, and we'll see you in the next one with the halves, the centers, and the wing fullbacks.